This Amateur Radio Roundtable is brought to you in part by Icom America. Good evening to everybody. Well, I got some feedback. Got to turn that down. You know, I do this every Tuesday night, but it seems like I forget all the things here. I want to say hello to all of our new visitors on our webpage tonight. We appreciate you joining us. Also, want to say hello to everybody out there that might be listening on famous international shortwave station WBCQ up in Monticello, Maine. We're on 5130. And if you're out there listening, send us an email to tom@w5kub.com. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a signal report where you're located, and we'll respond back to you. Also, if you're listening on the radio, you can join us on the internet if you have internet capability there at w5kub.com, w5kilouniformbravo.com. And I'd like to ask all of our viewers and all the people in the chat room, please click on the Facebook link at the top and join our Facebook group for the webcast. I checked it yesterday, and we were about 15 people short of 6,000 in our group. And I'd love to hit that 6,000 mark tonight. And let me see let's see what the number is. Actually, I got it right here in front of me. The number is, well, we're at 5965, so we need a few more. 5965, so we need some help there. So please join our Facebook group. I think we got a good show for you tonight. Nothing out of the ordinary, but we're going to be talking about some antennas again and a few things like that. We've got Joe Eisenberg with us. He's going to be back with us in a little while. He's got a lot of new kits, and he's also did some visiting of some ham radio clubs, I think, in Florida. We got Katie and Dave on here. Katie, how you doing? Katie, let's see. I got to hit the button here. Hey, Katie.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Well, doing pretty good. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Doing great this evening.
Well, that's good. You know, it's always funny. I'm looking at Dave's window, and I see daylight there all the time during the show. I just don't understand that.
That's because it's daylight here.
Oh, man. You know, the world's a funny thing, you know. Looks like we'd all have dark and daylight at the same time, and the Earth's flat and all that stuff. But anyway, hey, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys tonight. Hey, Katie, you got what you been doing lately, man? You got anything going on that you need to share with us or anything?
Well, sure. Let's see. This weekend we took a road trip out west to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's my first time actually ever making it that far west. I've lived out here almost 9 years and have never been out to the Tetons. So I got to see the Tetons, and it was a little, actually quite smoky from the fires in Idaho. So some of my photos came out a little bit cloudy, but we actually went out for a barbecue to the QTH of Wayne Mills, N7NG, a noted DXer. He has an annual barbecue out there with DXers and contesters. There was folks from Utah and Montana and Idaho, and of course Wyoming. There's been some DX that have come in the past, but this year was the first time we've been able to get our calendars to work out and be able to attend. So it was neat. There was some folks from Utah and Wyoming that I knew already, and made some new friends, and it was just a really nice day hanging out. They have a beautiful home, and Wayne's got a beautiful antenna, of course, and we get to see his shack. It's actually a pretty modest shack, but boy, oh boy, he sure knows how to work them from there. And did a little sightseeing while out there, and yeah, that was about it. We came home, and hopefully if the weather holds out for this weekend, we're going to attempt once again to get that new 20-meter beam up to the top of the tower. We've got some friends coming over on Saturday, but there's also calls for some thunderstorms, so we'll see what happens. But hopefully we can get that sucker up there once and for all. And
well, you know, Katie, I wouldn't worry about a little thunderstorm in the area. How tall is the tower?
100 feet.
100 feet, you know. I would just, hey, if you don't have any lightning within, 4 or 5 miles, I'd just go for it.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm not the one climbing, so Dwayne might have something else to say about that one.
Yeah. Well, hey, be sure and get some pictures when you guys get that up there. I'd love to see
yeah. I definitely
Yeah.
will, because I'd like to, kind of like I did a presentation before when the tower went up. I'd like to be able to show how we do it around here, getting that up to the top. We'll be having a couple of friends coming over to help out, and we'll see how it goes. So hopefully we'll be able to do that on Saturday. And then one thing of interest I thought I might point out, just in case anybody hadn't seen the news, I'm sure everybody's aware of the legislation that the ARRL has been working on for the related to the homeowners associations and antennas. And there's been a lot of information one way or the other, and I'm not sure if it was today or yesterday on the ARRL's page. They put up a really helpful Q&A, some kind of frequently asked questions about the Parity Act. And I'll plug in the website address into the chat room, but for anybody who's listening not in the chat, if you just go to arrl.org, and right on the front page is the ARRL. The title of the article is ARRL Post Amateur Radio Parity Act FAQs. I read through, I didn't get through the whole thing today, but I started looking through it because I realized I really wasn't that well informed about it, because it doesn't really affect me, but it certainly affects people out here in our area and hams all over. And I know some folks, for example, like our last year's Hiram Percy Maxim winner, Christopher, KD8YVJ, and his dad, KD8VRX, who were just returning from Costa Rica for the Youth Expedition, which, by the way, they got like 3,100 QSOs in their log. They
cool.
moved into their house and then became hams, but they had, the homeowners restrictions in place, so they've been real limited in what they could do. So it kind of answers some questions about that. Why does somebody move in there if they... if there's restrictions? Well, not everybody's a ham when they buy their house. And that's just one minor issue that's addressed. But there's a lot of helpful information in there, and I really suggest that you go give it a read, just simply to get a little bit more informed. And then hopefully, if you decide to get in touch with your local elected officials on the national level, obviously, and get some support for it. So I will just throw that out there for everybody.
Well, the Parity Act, I haven't kept up with it a whole lot, but I understand it's going through some changes, and I'm not sure if it's good or bad. I read about it, but I didn't understand it all. I'm trying to get some people on here maybe in a few weeks to talk about it again and let us know what's going on with it.
I think that'd be helpful, because there's so much information. It's so detailed, and we talked about it briefly over the weekend as well. And so much of it relates to how things process through our government. And I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily remember all of my classes from school about learning how everything works through the system and what goes to a committee, and then it goes for a vote, and then it goes to a bill, and how all of that stuff works. But I think overall it's good for ham radio. But I think if you go through that FAQ, it's pretty detailed and should give everybody a lot of good information and answer a lot of questions that are floating out there.
I attended a presentation by the ARRL Chief Counsel on the legislation last year, and I guess at one point it had passed the House, and it did not get on the Senate consent agenda because of a single senator who objected. Right. And that the language in there was a very careful compromise between what the Homeowners Association wanted and what the hams needed. And one of the things that's in there that's very significant is the idea that a ham needs to have an outdoor antenna, and an outdoor antenna must be made available. What all the details are, I don't know, because that legislation, that kind of legislation is so broad you could drive a truck through it.
Yeah, Dave, they talk about reasonable accommodations. If you want to work HF, maybe a reasonable antenna. I don't know who decides that reasonable, but I guess they can make you put a little 3-foot magnetic loop on your back porch instead of stretching out a dipole or something. And I don't think it gives people a lot of choice, maybe. Or
I don't know. We had an interesting situation here in Uray County. I found out approximately 5 minutes prior to the hearing that they wanted me to testify in front of the Planning Commission. And so another ham and I went down there, and answered questions and basically got it written into the Planning Commission's rules that if you wanted a 35-foot tower, you could basically consider it approved. If you wanted anything taller than that, you had to go through the variance process. But, that's for the county. That's not for the individual tracts.
Right.
And there's one where we looked at living that had a restriction, no external antennas at all, and even a loop. But there is, at least what Chuck Imlay is saying, is that there's going to be, some generally understood things hams can do. So we'll see if that's true.
We'll try to have someone on here soon that can talk about it. I live in an HOA, but it's not enforced, and it's really lax, and don't have any problems with the neighbors. I've got quite a few antennas up. I think we're going to talk about antennas tonight. Hey, Katie, you got anything else there you want to throw out here at us? Anything?
I don't think I have anything else tonight.
All right,
actually.
now you got your new your kitten that came by. Is he still there?
Oh yeah, my goodness. Yeah, and today is International Cat Day, so happy International Cat Day to all of the cat parents out there. Yes, I have another stray that had found his home with us and, was happy to eat the food and take shelter and drink water, but wanted nothing to do with us. And then miraculously, about a week ago, he started letting me touch him and pet him, and he's now he comes when I call him. And the last couple of days, he goes for walks with me. So I start to walk out in the yard, and I call him, and he walks with me, and he goes in between my legs and rubs on one leg and goes on the other. And so I have to walk very, very carefully.
Oh, boy. Well, it looks like you've got a friend there. Well,
I
Katie.
do, definitely. So I'm always happy when there's another cat to be loved on. So I'm kind of easy that way.
Well, I'm glad you got a new friend there. Maybe he won't do too much damage to your coaxes. Don't let him chew on them or anything like that. I think dogs do more of that than cats do.
Yeah, I think so too. And once I get him really in good shape and really trusting me, then into the carrier and down to the vet he goes. So
all right.
I got to butter him up first, but we got to take care of that. His name is Scotty for, the engineer Scotty on Star Trek.
All
Terry
right.
just asked on the
All right.
chat
We'll
room.
out. All right. Hey, take care of Scotty there.
I sure will. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you again
All
probably
right.
next week.
All right. We'll see you.
Good
And
night,
hey, Dave.
Good
Hey,
night, Dave.
Dave. So let's talk about some antennas tonight. And what's one of the biggest questions, or one of the most common questions that people might ask you on your Ask Dave channel?
Well, the most common question is, tell me the model number I need to buy for an antenna. And I can't answer that question for anybody. What I tell people, put up a 40-meter dipole, get started there, and then you can go from there and add stuff. Was sent a few weeks ago 4 wire antennas from MFJ to test. One of them was an end-fed ZEP for 20 meters, which would not work. It just would not work. And so I set it aside and put up a 20-meter collinear, which is basically 2 half-wave dipoles end to end, fed in the middle with a matching stub that will give you the proper impedance to feed the two. And because you've got them in a line like that, it's actually an array of dipoles, and it was phenomenal. I was blown away. It is like a couple S units better than my vertical. So I took the ZEP, which operates on the same principle as that in terms of the matching stub, and I cut it to the same length as the matching stub on the collinear, and it suddenly started working. So MFJ had cut the matching stub on that thing about 1.5 feet too long. And once I got that fixed and out of the way, it worked fine. But I try to tell people whatever you do, try to put up don't go out and spend a great deal of money on a fancy vertical antenna because they're very expensive, really. I mean, you can pay over $600 for something like the AV640, which is 40 and up. Whereas for about $10, you can put up a 40-meter dipole. And so I proved that. I got some old Romex, split it, took the wires out of the Romex, put up a 40-meter dipole, and it was just as good as my vertical.
Oh, yeah.
So $10 versus probably the total of $1,000 I've put into that vertical. And if it breaks, fine, throw it away, put another one up.
Well,
so, yeah, I get people who want model numbers. They don't necessarily want to build anything. And the model number I give out the most is MFJ's dual band 40-20 dipole.
yeah. Keep it simple. And after you show some of your antennas there, I've got some antennas that I'm using here that I'm going to just tell people what I'm using and how simple and easy they are and how well they work. So we're gonna just talk a lot about antennas tonight, and then after that we'll have Joe in here on kits.
Good. Looking forward to it. Yeah, I've been testing an antenna today. I've seen written about these end-fed multiband antennas, and end-feds is one. MFJ just came out with one, and they sent it to me to test. It's supposed to be good for 40 on up, any of the bands, 40 on up, and supposed to just sit right there on the nice SWR and everything. And boy, I'll tell you what, I've spent the last couple days doing everything I can think of, including talking to MFJ. I can't get this thing to work on 40 for nothing, but it works great on the other bands. And what's inside of it is kind of an amazing thing. It's an impedance transformer. It's a voltage balun that has a 49-to-1 impedance ratio. So it pushes 50 ohms up to over 2,000 ohms in order to feed the high impedance end of it. And it works on the bands above 40. I can't get it to work on 40 for nothing.
Well, maybe you need to just, now that's a vertical?
No, it's a horizontal antenna.
Oh, what's the name of it? Is that the cobweb or?
No, it's the end-fed horizontal antennas.
Okay, well, you got to play with it. You got to get it just right. You might move that end down 3 or 4 feet toward the ground, or you just don't know. Just try it in different shapes and heights, and you'll get it to work here. Now, you test a lot of antennas, but your main antenna at home is what? It's a vertical. And what kind is it?
It's a Butternut. It's an old one.
Okay.
HF9V. So it's ostensibly a 9-band verticals, meaning so it covers the work bands, and it covers a very tiny part of the 80-meter band, which you can kind of decide what you want, and then 40 on up to, in theory, 6.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated antenna that requires lots of radials. Now, when they said lots of radials, I originally thought, well, I'll throw a couple down. When they said lots of radials, they meant lots of radials.
Well, and here's lots of radials.
Oh yeah.
Now this is our friend Mr. Duffy up here at DX Engineering, and this is a vertical he's got. If you look very closely, you'll see the radials there, and if you read about radials, hey, when I put a portable antenna up like in North Carolina, I'll put three radials down, and it works. But they say, to get the next little bit of help from that, you got to double it. So you got to go. Actually, they suggest something like 12 radials to start with. And then if you want to get any improvement, then you got to go 24. Then any improvement, you got to go 48. So the number gets up there pretty high real fast. And most people can't do that. But hey, just get some radials down. If you got a vertical, get some radials down. If you can get 4 or 5 down, that's great, And hey, Dave, we've got a video here you made showing your antenna, and it is a complex-looking antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Let's run that video.
Okay.
And then we'll be back after that video.
Okay.
I'm Dave Casler, Amateur Radio, call sign KE0OG. And I'm going to answer a question that many people have asked. They say, Dave, what about your antenna? Tell us about your antenna. Well, we've been talking a lot about antennas recently. My antenna, my primary station antenna, is a vertical. It's a Butternut HF9V vertical, supposedly 9 bands. It covers a very small portion of the 80-meter band, and the SWR doesn't get below 2 to 1 on the 17-meter band. But otherwise, it's a very good antenna. It does great on 20 and 40, which are the 2 bands that I use the most. The antenna requires radials, so we'll take a look at the radials, the antenna itself, how I've got it connected, what I've done, how I keep the thing up in the air, and a number of questions like that. So let's go on a field tour.
Let's just follow the coax here. It's the RG213 on the ground. We live in an area where landscaping is not permitted by covenant. Everything is supposed to be natural. So I figure I can just leave the coax on the ground. It's the easiest way to see if anything has been done to it. It will kind of disappear into the grass after a while if you just leave it there. But don't forget it is there, because you don't want to actually drag it up. Now right here on this board, which is designed to keep this above the ground, I'll zoom in on it there, is the waterproofed connection between the RG213 and another different kind of cable, I'll have to look it up, that acts as a matching stub between here and the bottom of the antenna. Now the antenna sits right here. I have a sleeve around the bottom. Just can't quite see from this corner. But the sleeve is designed so that I can put the antenna down into the sleeve and pick it out again without having to bury it, unbury it. It's made of a piece of pipe just designed so that it would be enough for the other pipe to stick into it. So going up the antenna, we have down at the bottom here a coil, which is really spread out. I could actually take some turns off of it. But that connects the main antenna shaft here with ground through this inductance, and this is what enables it to be resonant on 80 meters. Now as we go up the antenna, we encounter some coils and some, of all things, capacitors. This is how it actually gets the capacitance it needs. And the coils are very large, made of very large stock aluminum, because the idea is that they will pass all the current without any significant resistance. The antenna is tuned by changing the length of the coils. Down here at the bottom, this is the 80-meter coil. By moving that connection down there with the wing nut around, I can lengthen or shorten the coil. Capacitors are fixed. By the way, those capacitors are high voltage capacitors, and they are expensive. I had to replace one. And then this coil right here off on the side, the 30 meter coil, taps into the 40 meter coil, and the positioning of that tap is super ultra critical. And all kinds of fun to get that in the right position. Now up here, these things sticking out to the side are actually devices designed to provide a little capacitance. They're at right angles here. And then it goes on up. That one up there is the 12 meters. And then as we go up the coil, we see some stubs. It's quite tall. The way it's held up in the wind is I put the sleeve pipe, which is about 3 feet long, down in a hole, and then held the antenna in place with some rope, packed that dirt in around it, and then after a couple years let it took the guy ropes off, and then the thing promptly leaned a couple degrees. You can't seem to avoid it. This thing at the bottom here is from DX Engineering. It's a radial plate. Now see how this is connected here. We have a place over here on the side for the connection. You know, everything is weatherproofed. The connection, and the coax braid is attached to the ground plate, and then the interior goes up and attaches to the antenna proper. Okay, so the antenna mast or shaft is insulated from the ground by that big chunk of fiberglass right there. Now there is a DC ground to bleed off static charges through this coil, although of course that coil gives considerable reactance at RF, so there's a significant difference in RF potential between ground and this piece of the shaft. Now what I've done here is I've attached to this radial plate a gazillion radials. Well, I guess it's actually a countable number. There's room on here for more. It's interesting, they provided something like 60 holes, but not near that many screw sets, or bolt sets. So what I did is I did a lot of crimping here to the radials to give them a good solid connection. The radials are, well, you can sort of see them on the ground over here, and you can see that they're not exactly stretched out straight. They all kind of go off into the distance under the trees. Basically, where those trees are forms the limits of the radials. Okay, and the radials are on the ground, just lying on the ground, and I opted for insulated radials. The ends are attached to little chunks of wood or something like that to hold them in place. Kind of steer clear of the propane tank just a little bit. There are also, and you can barely see them at this point. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there we go. Okay, right there. These were the original radials. 12 pieces of number 8 bare wire that was buried. They were buried under here, and I thought, oh, that'd make a great radial field. They go on out, I think, 25 feet each, and I had a neighborhood kid come and dig trenches for all of those. They're terrible radials. They really don't do any good. However, they're great now that I've got a radial field on top of it. These make for a great grounding rod. So there's 12 of them out there. The first set of radials that I put down, I tried soldering to this ring What you see here, see, that was the old original ring. It actually shows up out here. As an aside, this is a solar panel that I use, and unfortunately it got hit down here by a rock while doing some weed eating, which just shattered the glass everywhere. Not there, but actually for the entire piece of glass on the panel was shattered. So I don't know how long this will last. It's still producing, but then again it's dry, and the fact that the glass is cracked across the whole thing will keep the device from keeping the water out. So we'll see how it happens. See what happens. Now, tracing the wire back over this way, we don't have
Looks like the tour is about finished.
Yeah, so Dave, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. Looks like you're walking back at the house. You've got one dry piece of land there.
Oh, yeah. This part of Colorado is classified as an alpine desert. And the trees that we have are pinyon pines and junipers, which are really scrubby trees. And there's not much undergrowth because we probably only get 12 or 13 inches of rain a year. The reason we have trees at all is because we're at 7,000 feet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd look just like Arizona.
Well, I'll tell you, looking at that antenna, and you've got a lot of ground radials there, and that requires a lot of work, and that looks like a complicated antenna. I think, like you said, that would not be something that you would recommend for somebody new getting into ham radio that didn't have any experience. Because I imagine tuning those coils and those capacitive bars and things on there are somewhat difficult. And how easy was it?
I had a heck of a time with it. When we rehabilitated it, I had my wife sit in the shack, and we had our cell phones going. I know we should have properly used 2-meter radios, but I would say, did that change it? You're going the wrong way. No, okay, go the other. And I'd be moving it millimeters at a time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very finicky antenna. It replaced an R5, which was, of course, just 20 and up, because I wanted 40. I should have just gone with the dipole. But I do tell people today, go with those radialless verticals, like the AV640 or the R5 or the R7 or something like that. Because those radials, you need a gazillion of them to do it right.
If you try to put up a quarter wave, you're going to have a ground plane or radials. I think a half wave vertical does not require radials, but they'll tell you probably in the manual that comes with it if it will improve anything by putting a few under there. Man, that was an interesting video there, and as we mentioned, you had a lot of radios, and you can see there's some radios to go there on this picture here. I put radios down in my backyard, but what I did, Dave, was here we have an edger, a gas-powered edger. It has a little blade that spins vertically, and I just took that from the center insulator right there at the antenna farm and just go straight out with that edger. And it cuts a little notch, a 1/4 inch wide and about 2 inches deep. And you just cut a bunch of those with that gas power, and then you just come back and you just lay your wire in there and you step on it, and it's buried, So that's what I did. So Dave, I've got that's interesting. That's the antenna you use. You've made it work. You've had to do a lot of tuning with it and some fine tuning and radios and adjustments. I've had antennas like it in the past, but I'm going to show people what I've got here. And we can talk about this. Chime in, Dave, when you get ready.
Sure.
I had, before I moved to the Memphis area, I had a tower up and a Mosley Classic 33 beam. It worked great. But I took that thing down, and ever since then I've used wire antennas. And people ask, what kind of antennas do I use? Well, and again, I'm very lucky that around my house, I've got a 1 acre lot, and around my house I have 80 and 90 foot tall trees completely all around my house. So it makes it real easy to put an antenna up. So, what kind of antennas do I use? And here's kind of my preference right here. I mentioned the other night, a delta loop. It is so easy to make a delta loop. It's just a full wave piece of wire fed with coax and a balun. And the picture says 40 through 10, but it will also work 6 meters. And I've used it on 6. And the thing about this is, you cut this wire on 40 meters, the right length, and it's just about resonant on all the other higher bands, so it requires really no tuning at all. And from my shack here, I went out through the wall. I cut a hole through the brick wall, put me, I think, a 2-inch conduit underground, and ran it 130 feet out to the backyard where my antenna farm starts. And all my feed lines go into a grounding system in a box. Let's see, I've got a picture of it. All my radials come into a ground system there with barrel connectors that will ground all the coaxes to ground for lightning protection, and that's the point in my backyard where all of my antennas hook. So my favorite antenna is the delta loop, R loop. It is so easy to make. You can find wire. You can use any kind of wire you can find. It doesn't have to be anything special. And then, so the nice thing about the delta loop is it's a multi-band antenna. The next antenna I've got out there, I put me up a fan dipole. We talked about this for 80, 40, and 20. It becomes very much more difficult, at least for me, to tune when you add the 4th and 5th bands on there, but it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to tune with just 3 bands. So right there, 1 coax coming in, 80, 40, and 20. That's 3 bands. So that works really well. My next antennas, I've got some inverted V's hanging out in my trees out there. I've got 1 inverted V for 15 meters and 1 inverted V for 17 meters. Mm-hmm. Let's go on down. I've got an off-center fed antenna that covers 80 through 6 meters, and it's pulled up in the trees out there. And again, this is an antenna you can bring in on 1 coax and work multiple bands without a tuner.
Really, that's
and then
cool.
And then here is something. Yeah, and all those antennas I've just mentioned are resonant antennas. I've got a little Ameritron AL 811 amp here. It's maybe 800 watts. So I like to have resonant antennas. I don't want to tune this from inside the house. I don't want to tune the coax. So I like resonant antennas because you can put power to them, and that's why I have so many different antennas there. And then I've got one last antenna, which basically is just a vertical piece of wire that is about, I don't know, 60 or 70 feet tall, hanging over a tree limb. And I've got that connected to an SCG product. It's the SC237 auto antenna tuner. And I'm telling people, this antenna tuner will tune just anything. And so I'm using this 160 through 6 meters. You hit that with just a watt of power, and it will automatically tune it down to just about a 1-to-1 perfect match. It's only 100 watt though, so this antenna is limited to 100 watts. I've got that connected above the radio system that I've got buried in the ground. There's a picture of what the antenna smart tuner looks like. Again, I like it out at the antenna. And then on 6 meters, I've got, and this is not mine, but this is a picture of it. This is a 6 meter turnstile antenna. It's just 3 pieces of a PVC pipe, and it's 2 6 meter full wave quad loops, 90 degrees from each other.
I like that.
90 degrees from each other, and there's a little phasing harness that you put there at the bottom. And this makes it omnidirectional. And you just tie that to a rope and you pull it up in a tree about 60 feet high. And you got an omnidirectional 6-meter antenna up there. Again, all this is fed through my underground LMR 400. I ran four runs of LMR 400 out to my antenna farm, and I also ran 2 runs of like Cat 5 cable out there, each of course having 8 conductors in it. So that's what goes out to my antenna farm. You saw a picture there that it all comes up there. There's a little experimental multi-band antenna that I had built. That was a vertical. I'm not using it right now, but you can see the spreaders there, and that's a 5-band vertical. Each leg right there is for each band. 40 was in the center, pulled up under a tree limb. That held the whole thing up, and then the spreaders, on the end of the spreaders out there, we had 20 meters, 15, 17, and 10. And that antenna would work fairly well, but I'm not using it right now. So I got all these antennas out there. If you look at how I control them or switch them, I've got just a 4-position switch on the right there. And you noticed I had about 7 or 8 antennas out there. So I've got a 4-position switch, but position 3 right there goes over to that MFJ antenna switch box, which gives me four more antennas. So I go to position 3 there, and then I go over to my antenna box there, and I can select 4. So I could bring 7 antennas in easily there.
Is that the Heathkit antenna switch?
No, that's the Meritron. It's the Meritron. And
no, I mean the one on the right.
I don't know the make of that. I really don't know. So
I've got a Heathkit that looks just like it.
So maybe on a future show, I'm gonna an antenna switch is so easy to build. I want to show something just real quick, and I'm not gonna get into details. This was an old AB switch box. There are hundreds of these. People throw them away all the time. Ethernet RJ45 connector on it, and then here's a military box. I put some relays in there and 8 connectors, and hey, I got me an RJ45 jack right here, and 7-position antenna switch. You can build that for about $25 instead of spending maybe $130 or so for one, maybe even more. So that's kind of my antenna situation here. I found I can talk anywhere that I talk to on my beam, and I'm okay with that. So you don't need a beam, guys. You don't need a beam.
It's interesting you're saying that, because I'm finally starting to contemplate that for myself. I was looking at those spider beams, because I talked to quite a few people who have them. And then I looked at that. They talk about 5 dB gain over isotropic radiator. And I go, well, you got to subtract about 2.2 out of there for being better than a dipole, and you're only about 3 dB gain over a dipole.
Yeah.
And I can get that on that collinear on 20 meters, which is where I really want it. So I think the next step, I've been sort of mentally pricing things. I'm probably looking at the cheapest way I could get it up is guide Roan Tower, with a A3 or something on top of it. Yeah. We'll see. That's way down the road. By the time you put up the expense of beams, they're expensive. You got,
they are.
The concrete base, you got the tower, you got the guys, you got the rotator, the thrust bearing, and somebody's got to climb that silly thing and put the beam on top.
Maybe concrete. And hey, guy wire's not cheap. There's a lot.
I see a lot of people using this non-conductive guy wire too.
Right. Well, Dave, we need to.
Question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
On your 6-meter antenna, you mentioned a phasing loop in there. Does that make that antenna give it some gain in certain directions?
Well, actually, what you have, Dave, you've got 2 full wave loops. One, let's just say one running east and west, and one running north and south. 90 degrees apart. And it's just 2 loops, 90 degrees apart. And what that phasing harness does, it just phases those two together so you can feed it with 50 ohm cable. So that's all as far as the omnidirectional antenna, and it works great. And if you got a real high tree limb, pull it up there. And hey, it doesn't take much antenna on 6 meters actually when the band's open. Dave, we need to run now, and we got Joe Eisenberg standing by out there, and he's got quite a bit for us tonight. So I'm gonna jump on down with Joe there. Any last words there?
No, just good to be on the show as usual, and I'm still trying to fix this antenna, and I'm looking forward to the kit segment.
All right, great. Well, we'll talk to you. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Okay, guys, we'll be right back with you in just a minute, and we're going to be bringing Joe in here. Start this year's contest season with Icom. Heard it, worked it, logged it. The time is now to get your contesting equipment. Let Icom help you make as many contacts as possible. Start off strong in contesting this season with the IC7300, ideal for the ham on the go. It's a high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design. It has RF direct sampling, 15 discrete bandpass filters, a large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, real-time spectrum scope, and an SD memory card slot. Use the IC7851 and get the most out of the contest season. Raise the bar and hear what others cannot hear with this HF through 50 megahertz transceiver. It has reciprocal mixing dynamic range, crystal clear local oscillator, spectrum scope, dual receivers, and a digital voice recorder. The Icom Hams to America sweepstakes is coming to an end. There's still time to enter for a chance to win a grand prize, an unforgettable experience to attend the 2017 Tokyo Ham Fair. The drawing for the grand prize will take place July 17, 2017. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on Icom radios. Okay, we're back. Let me just mention, if you're listening on WBCQ on International Shortwave Station on 5130, WBCQ out of Monticello, Maine, we welcome you. You can join the show if you have the internet. Go to w5kub.com and you can watch the show and you can join us in the chat room. Also send us an email, tom@w5kub.com. And we've got with us now Joe Eisenberg with us. And how you doing, Joe? Let me see if I can figure out how to get you on here. I got to click something. There we go. How you doing, Joe?
All right, Tom. There we are. In my messy shack as usual. But that's changing because did some changes upstairs in the house. And hopefully we'll get the shack next. Anyways, I've got all sorts of kits, and we'll talk about a couple of ham fests and so forth, and we'll get started. I do have to say my greatest apologies for not being at Huntsville. Once again, it's because of the eclipse. I live in the band of totality, but I'm kind of close to the edge, so I will be traveling maybe as short as across town and maybe as far as western Nebraska. It really depends on where the clouds are. Might go towards St. Joe or something. So it really depends on where the clouds are, and we'll see how it works. But didn't want to take the risk of my Sunday night flights not making it home in time, which, as you know, has happened quite a few times on my Huntsville trip.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I didn't think you had any clouds out there. The chance of clouds are less out there than where we're going to go see it, I think, at north of Nashville.
Yeah, but we never know.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Thought I'd play it safe and stay close to home for eclipse weekend. All right. Let's see, where we want to start first. We can start off with some kits, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to show some pictures, and I'm going to show some live. Let's show a couple of them live. This one I showed really briefly before. This is a Pentec kit. You can get it from WA3RNC, and I think it's WA3RNC.com. And what this is it's a 40-meter CW transmitter. Now, if you'll notice, looking at that board, there's lots of surface mount parts. Well, guess what? You don't have to put those on. The board comes with all the surface mount parts done. Yes, you're going to wind a couple of toroids in there. There's actually 4 of them on this. And if you look on the bottom of the board, five of them, sorry, because there's one on the bottom as well. And we can see here, you can see the toroid on the bottom and the bottom of the tuning capacitor. And he puts out these boards where all the surface mount parts are pre-tested and everything. That's why there's a lot of these little round pads on the bottom and that have no wires on them. And that's because he has a pin cushion and he tests these out. So you get the board with all the surface mount parts done. So all you got to do is the through hole parts and you're all done. And so it's a nice one evening kit to put together. What makes this different than a lot of the 40 meter VXO type things is that this has two crystals in kind of a differential oscillator circuit, actually three crystals. And so what he does is he messes with all three of those. And so the variable capacitor, instead of tuning it 3 or 5 kilohertz, it actually tunes it about 50 or so kilohertz. So covers a good deal of the 40 meter CW band. Here's one that I covered a little while ago in my column in CQ. This kit is actually part for part the very first product that MFJ ever put out. But now it's sold as a kit. And what it is it is a CW audio filter. Now I'm going to see if I can get it close enough that the camera will focus.
That's good.
And it has a 1/4-inch mono headphone jack. And the filter does 80 hertz, 110 hertz, and 180 hertz. And the input, well, you got the on-off switch on the back. There's a 9-volt battery in there, and it's 2 screw terminals. This is exactly the same, just in a slightly different case, but it's the same board and the same guts as the very, very first product that MFJ ever put out, which was this very tight switch capacitor audio filter. Absolutely an incredible filter, doesn't ring a lot or anything, and I've used the original one for many years and then built this kit version, and it retains all the functionality of the original. And like I said, none of the parts values have been changed. It's a single-sided board, so it's very easy for a first-time kit builder. Let's see. This next kit, and you might see it in my photos I'm going to show in a little bit. Let's look at a TV remote control, okay? When you push the button on a TV remote control and point it at your cell phone camera, what do you see?
You see a light.
Yeah, see it? It flickers.
Yeah.
It sends little codes.
Well,
okay?
it also sends some light that your camera will see. Without the camera, you don't see any light there most of the time.
That's right, because it's infrared.
Yeah.
And there's 2 different kinds of infrared LEDs used in remote controls, depending on the wavelength that they're looking for. So what happens if you take a chip that's got all the on-off codes for about every TV ever made and puts them in sequence with amplified LEDs, and you give it over 100-foot range, you get a thing called the TV Be Gone. And this is a prankster's delight.
I can see that being a troublemaker.
Yeah, walk into the Nebraska Furniture Mart or Best Buy or a place
Walmart,
like that.
Walmart, anywhere, yeah.
So if you don't like Fox News on at McDonald's or you don't like CNN at Runza, you just push the button and it goes away. Now, on my cell phone camera, this one will blind my cell phone camera. It's that bright. But I'm going to put it on this one and just see what it does.
It is bright. Oh, yeah.
It's very bright.
Yeah.
Because it's designed to go over 100 feet.
Yeah.
So if I'm being careful not to turn it to my right, because then it would shine out my window and across the street and probably turn off the neighbor's TV set.
Oh, boy.
But it's called a TV Be Gone. Runs on 2 AA batteries. And if you looked at the circuit board, did you see a lot of parts on there? No.
No.
This is a 20-minute kit. Even a first-time kit builder can put it together in half an hour, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's kind of a prank box, but it's fun, and it teaches you a lot. And the software is open source, so you can download updates and so forth if you're familiar with burning the Atmel series of CPU chips. Okay, So let's take a look at some of my photos. And to do this, let's see. I'm probably not doing this right. I need to, let's see. I think I need to do this to
Hit the
share
plus,
my screen.
hit the plus and do share desktop.
Okay, did that work?
Yes.
Okay, so now you can see your ugly face frozen a bit.
I can.
And so let's go and we'll open up the kits folder. And let's maximize that so you don't see my Central Standard Time on the screen. All right, what you're looking at is a close-up view of the TV be gone. One of the resistors is missing. They don't use that one anymore in the later version. And the jumper resistor is not there here at R3, and that's because if you put that resistor in there, then it changes it to the European TV codes. Otherwise, the Asian and US codes are in place from that CPU. It goes together, like I said, in about 20 minutes, and it's a lot of fun. This is a better look at that Pentec that I was holding up to the camera earlier. As you can see, it's in a lot better focus. You can look at all the surface mount parts, and down here is the output transistor. It puts out a good 4.5, 5 watts, and a very clean CW transmitter, and it does have the TR switching, so you can hook a receiver to it. It also has a spot function that turns on the oscillator so you can tune your receiver to your transmit frequency, or vice versa, move the transmitter to where the receiver is. Now let's take a look at another MFJ kit, and this one is also a legacy kit. MFJ has put this kit out, I know, more than 20 years. And so there's been a few changes in components because some of them are not available anymore. As you could tell by the instructions, some of them don't comment about the change in components. But the main board is pretty much the same. It is a single-sided board, which makes it a lot easier to desolder from. And this is a general coverage regenerative shortwave broadcast receiver and great beginning shortwave radio. This is a better close-up of what all the parts look like before they're all put together. And this is what the board looks like. Now you can look at that and say, wow, there's a lot of empty space there. That's right. There's not a lot of components on this one as well. So this is a real good beginner's kit also. If you've put together any kind of a small kit before, this would be a good one to tackle after you've had just a little experience. And you'll see those long lines there, those long white lines on the board. You notice that? Mm-hmm. Those are for jumpers because it is a single-sided board. So where one lead had to cross over another, they use wires. Well, the good news is that the kit comes with the wires already cut and stripped for you. Wow. The bad news is that they made some slight modifications on this circuit board. And so some of the wires are not quite the right length. So all you got to do is shorten them up a little bit and restrip it, and it works just fine. And this is what the board looks like with all the wires stuffed on it. See how we did that? Mm-hmm. Just like magic. And this is what the front panel looks like when it's all completed. And that's a vernier dial. The tuning dial is a vernier dial. So it's not as touchy as a lot of the regenerative receivers are. A lot easier to tune. The regeneration control is broad enough that it's not real touchy either. And so it covers quite a bit of spectrum all the way from the bottom of the 80 meter band up to about 22, 23 megs.
Yep.
Okay, now this is another kit, and this is a 4-state QRP kit. And what this is called is the buzz kill. Now, how many of you have run into the situation where your line frequency noise, your 60 hertz, seems to permeate signals that you're listening to on the radio? Sometimes it's more than 60 hertz. Sometimes it's a harmonic of it, like 120 hertz or 180 hertz and so forth. Well, this kit called the Buzz Kill forms a notch filter that covers 60 hertz and 120 hertz and 180 and so forth. It covers the harmonics of 60 hertz. So you can take a situation where you have a problem with some appliance or some gadget that is putting out the line voltage hum at 60 hertz and its harmonics, and this is multiple notch filters. It is not a DDS, it is not a noise blanker. What it is it's a multiple notch filter that's fixed on 60 hertz and its harmonics. This was designed by David Kripe, NM0S, who is a Collins engineer, Collins Radio, Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids. This is what the board looks like when it's completed. And I did this a couple of days ago. And there are a lot more components on this one. So you got to at least allocate a couple hours or so for putting this one together. Now, to make my connections to audio in and out, I simply took a computer audio cable, which is 3-conductor, and cut it in half and just soldered one half to the input and one to the output. So I could plug the input into the radio's audio output and then plug the output into an amplified speaker. These little Bluetooth speakers, a lot of them have auxiliary inputs, and it worked just fine. And of course, when Radio Shack went belly up a couple of months ago, I picked up a couple of those neat little Bluetooth speakers that have aux inputs for under $5. So they put out a lot of sound and great frequency response for listening to shortwave. But this is the buzzkill, and that's what it looks like when it's completed. So we're done with the kits, and let's see here. We'll talk a little bit about a local hamfest here. There is a tiny state park, or at least relatively tiny. It has these wonderful groves of trees in the picnic area. And years ago, when I first started going to this in the 1970s, that entire grove of trees had rows of picnic tables under it, and we had well over 350 people out there. This year, there was only 70. So it has dropped off quite a bit. But Victoria Springs is a state park, which is about 20 miles northwest of Broken Bow, which is approximately 200 miles northwest of where I am in Lincoln, Nebraska. But it's within a few miles of the geographic center of Nebraska, so we got a pretty big state. Kind of a neat park. The lake and the creek are filled by a artesian spring. In fact, the water in the park is supplied by the artesian well that exists on the property. And this monument was put there in 2009. This tells the whole story of the Victoria Springs steak fry, which started in 1960. And actually the first formal one was in 1961. So this was the 56th Victoria Springs steak fry. The very first one had 64 people at it, and like I said, it's gotten as big as over 350, and now it has dropped to about 70. So we're hoping to promote it in the big city clubs like Lincoln and Omaha and get people to bring their campers and come back out and make it the big thing it used to be. What do we do out there? We eat. Oh boy, do we eat. We have homemade ice cream. We have hot dogs and hamburgers, and everything is grilled out. This is our grilling crew. We have 2 large grills, but did not need 2 grills this year, unfortunately. Last year's attendance was about 110, including non-hams, and like I said, this year about 70. The 2 people on the left are from Lincoln, and the guy on the right is from a town called Surprise in Nebraska, which is just west of me. And after we have Saturday night hot dogs and hamburgers, we have popcorn. And they make 2 varieties of it. They make regular plain popcorn and popcorn with sugar mixed in. Quite a treat. And you can see it's all done with those hand crank poppers on camp stoves. The flea market this year consisted of 3 pickup trucks. Okay, It's not very big. It's not very big, but there was quite a bit of treasures that were offloaded on Saturday night. There was a silent key whose stuff was sold last year, and then their family came up with a whole bunch more stuff that was stored away. And unfortunately, the guy was a heavy smoker, so the radios didn't look very good. But they had a pickup truck full of parts and connectors and stuff this year, and they were just giving it away. And the guy just handed me this linear amplifier, says, "Can you use this?" And I said, "Sure." And it was an Alpha 374A. And I don't know if it works or not, but I'll light it up and see what it does. I have a 374 that I'm working on, and which belonged to my Elmer. And so to have a 374A, which has a lot of the same parts, that's going to be quite advantageous. So between the two of them, we should get one working amplifier. There was a lot of other stuff that I picked up. Obviously, I didn't grab everything. There was way too much. But I picked up an SB200 and a Alpha 374A. So got a project to work on. Sunday morning or Sunday noon is the big event, and that's the steak fry. And we have our grill experts going at it right there. We do mostly eating there, and now everybody fits underneath the picnic shelter, which is nice, but it's kind of sad too, because like I said, in past years we would take pickup trucks and take every single picnic table out of the campgrounds and move them down into the lower area of the park, and we don't do that anymore. Which is kind of sad. I remember having PA speakers draped on those trees for hundreds of feet so everybody can hear what was going on. And nowadays we just have one speaker hanging on the post in the picnic area. This is a reporter from the Custer County Chief interviewing Dan, KR0A, who lives in Myrna, which is the closest town to the park. He's our president of the Central Nebraska Amateur Radio Club, and she's interviewing him because we had a special presentation, and that was to the lady who runs the park now, a AED, an automatic electronic defibrillator. Mark is a EMT and a mechanic for the Lincoln Fire Department, Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and we had a member of our group had a heart problem and ended up being helicoptered to a hospital in Kearney, which is about 80 or 90 miles away. And not having this device nearby made things difficult. And the local volunteer fire and rescue, the soonest they could be there is 20 minutes or so, because this park is really way out there. So we decided that as a club, we would purchase this AED, which will remain in the main office at this park. So it's available right away for anybody to use that. And it was a great contribution by the Central Nebraska Amateur Radio Club to the Victoria Springs State Recreation Area. And this is our group shot. This is what I take every year, get everybody together. And sometime I will show you guys what the group shot looked like in 1971. If you persuade me someday, I will dig that up and show you how big the group shot was in 1971, when it was near its peak. But that's all of us hams standing there at the end of Victoria Springs. Always a fun time. I've gone most every year since 1972. A couple weeks ago, my brother decided to move to Florida. He already had the house there for a year and a half, which was a vacation rental, and he decided to move there permanently. And so I was tasked with driving one of his cars, and it was a 2011 Chrysler 300C, big black car with 19-inch wheels. So I made a trip of it. Went through Nashville, Kansas City, St. Louis, Paducah, Nashville, Chattanooga, Atlanta, Tampa, and Cape Coral, which is where he was in Southwest Florida. So I'll just show just a few pictures. That's what I had to put up with when I got there. Nice little pool. It's all screened in so you don't get the bugs, and keeps the alligators out. This is what it looks like sunset on his block, and nice place to be. How about that, Tom? How's that for a shot?
Yeah.
That was, like I said, a couple weeks ago. The problem was it was 94 degrees and about 89% humidity. And it gets that way during the midsummer, but in a few weeks it will cool off more and be a little more comfortable. How about that? I was way up there, 500 feet up.
I've done that.
I got to do parasailing for the first time.
It gets really quiet up there.
Yes, it does. And that's what I was not expecting. I thought it was going to be noisy and windy and wobbly and stuff. It was very calm and peaceful and quiet up there, and you could see forever. It was wonderful. And there I am with my nephew and his friend from Omaha, who came along with them in their motorhome. They drove down a day before I did. But the first night I was there in Cape Coral, across the bridge in Fort Myers, I was asked to speak to the Fort Myers Amateur Radio Club. And so I did my kit building techniques for success, and that's probably the biggest darn screen I've ever had.
Pretty big, yeah.
It's a wall of screens that they use. This was held in the Lee County Emergency Operations Center, the situation room that they use like for hurricanes. And so I brought back a lot of information that the emergency people gave me to give to my brother to educate him a bit on the hurricane preparedness in Cape Coral where he lives. So, of course, you want to try out what a hurricane is like. This was the day before. I was in a town just north of Tampa, and I was given a tour by Chris, AA4CB, who took me around town and took me to MOSI, the Museum of Science and Industry in Tampa. And you sit in this room wearing goggles and a headset, and you're exposed to hurricane force winds. And it's pretty interesting. You have this electronic sign on the wall that tells you what the wind speed is. And of course, when it got anything more than a breeze, I had to put my camera down. And they didn't want you to do it with your cell phone because it would blow away and hit the wall. So it is very windy if you're in a hurricane. This is a look through the window at the ham station there. That ham station is being moved to a new place in West Palm Beach. So there will be no longer a ham station at the museum in Tampa. And it's also because the Tampa Museum itself is moving elsewhere, and they have not made provisions yet for an amateur station. Here's another picture of it. Talks about different forms of communications. Well, I thought I got lost. Look at this street sign. Here I am in Tampa. I got lost. It says Nebraska, but there's palm trees. How about that? This is the Gulf Coast Amateur Radio Club. And Chris asked me before I came down there if I would come and give a presentation to their club. And I said, you know, it depends upon when your club meeting night was. And it worked out absolutely perfectly. So I got to speak to them. This clubhouse actually was an old neighborhood clubhouse that had a pool that served the neighborhood around it. Well, the organization went bankrupt and they sold the house, and the radio club bought it. So this is a house that's surrounded by a residential neighborhood, but it has an empty pool, which they use to stick their generator in to keep it quiet during field day and so forth. Actually, a very nice, very friendly club. I was very impressed. Several of you seen Chris, A4CB, or Dawn, WA4YL. They are members of this club. And they knew that if they got me anywhere near Florida, that they'd want me to speak there. And I was only about 20 minutes away. So here I am speaking in the clubhouse, and we had a great crowd. This is what the crowd looked like, at least part of it, while I was getting ready and people were coming in. And they even made a cake, and that's the first time I've ever had that. I kind of got shook up. That was really, really nice. Wonderful club. and just never had that before. And I had to cut the slices and serve it for them. And just the nicest club. If you ever get to that area of Florida around Port Richey, which is where this club is, be sure to check out the Gulf Coast Amateur Radio Club. Very friendly bunch, a wonderful, wonderful club that gets into all sorts of public service events as well as hurricane and disaster communications. So, of course, didn't get a lot of free time during this time because I was helping my brother move his stuff around and get things plugged in like the TVs and so forth and get everything working technically in his house like Wi-Fi and so forth. And so we did get to have breakfast by the beach, and that's at Cape Coral Beach. And this little character was on a post. This is a burrowing owl, and this was about 1 block from my brother's house. There was an empty lot that is a burrowing owl sanctuary, and you could just walk up right to it. It was just right on the curb of the street. You could just take a picture, and there he was, just looking right at me. And Cape Coral, where he moved to, is a city of canals, and so this is one of the canals that actually goes out into the ocean. A lot of people have their own docks in their backyard. So if you look at a map of Cape Coral online, you'll see this intricate network of canals that goes through the whole city, and the streets go up and over bridges all the time to allow the boats to pass underneath. And pretty amazing place. He does not live on a canal, but I think he's going to soon, so he can get a boat that goes out into the ocean. And so back to the pool we go, and that's the end of the pictures, and let's see if we can get my video back. That's going to be interesting.
Which video? Oh, yeah.
Let's see. So I
can do it from here. Watch this. Oh, there you go. You got it.
I got it. There we go. So now you got me back, and so now you've seen my travels over the last several days and so forth, and a bit about a local ham fest here, and lots of kits. So we'll answer any questions. I did not get a chance to look at the chat room during this, but I do have it up, and we'll see what's going on.
Well, I followed some of it. Your discussion on Miami and the weather brought some comments out for sure. I'm sure there's some others in here about your kits, though. I used to get down to Miami quite often in my job, and let me tell you, when the temperature would get below 60, people were wearing parkas with the hood that comes over, and Home Depot was selling out of stoves, the heaters. And on the news at night, you'd hear a special announcement on the news about be careful, don't burn your house down during the cold spell.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, I'll tell you what, what's interesting there is that the houses obviously don't have basements, and a lot of them have pools. And during a hurricane, sometimes they tell you to drain your pool first because it will flood when it fills up, and or the water will blow out onto the lanai, which is the pool deck, or into the house. So there's a lot of precautions. His house is actually made of concrete. It's steel reinforced concrete. So it doesn't look like it because it has a stucco outside, but it's steel reinforced concrete, and has special hurricane glass on the windows and shutters and so forth.
Well, your little LED kit, had some people talking in the room, and I just wanted to mention this to people. I'll try to hold it close to the camera. This was something we built called the Enforcer T&E Electronics. Yeah, T is for Tom, E is for Ed. And this is a little microwave device we built up and sold at Dayton a number of years, probably 20 years ago. And it's a 10.5 gig transmitter. And we actually had the microwave boards etched, and we built these. And in fact, it used surface mount components, and I mean, they were so small, Joe used a microscope to put them on, And the interesting thing about it, you press the button, and it sends out a X-band radar signal, and it would really slow down people on the highway. And as you and I were talking earlier, I've had people try to pass me, and I just reach over and press the button, and they put their brakes on, they get behind me, and then they'll get brave enough to try it again. We'll press the button, they'll get behind me again, and so forth. Now, your story was you did this to some people, and he finally passed you, and got pulled over down the road.
Yeah, that was in South Carolina years ago.
Well,
that was fun.
This is a neat little project Ed and I built, and we put a little, like I say, we put a little logo in the front and everything. We call it the Enforcer. The green screen's taking that out, but it cost us a little under $10 to build these. Worked on a 9-volt battery, and we sold them for $40 a piece. And we'd take 100 every year to Dayton, and we had them packaged in bubble, the shrink packaging and so forth. And we sold 100 of these every year up there. So 100 times $40 is $4,000. And back then, boy, we would have rolls of money in our pants pockets outside at Dayton. But I think the statute of limitations has gone. Also, we were selling this to hams, and you could send your call letters by the push button on the front here if you wanted to be legal. But this was a neat little thing that we built, and of course now with it, years ago they went with laser and different things like that, and different bands. So the X band just really wasn't that great anymore. Well, hey, Joe, thanks a lot for showing us the new kits and your talk about your trip and everything. We're going to miss you in Huntsville here in a little over a week, maybe a week and a half, I guess. And
that just gives you more chances to win prizes.
Yeah. Hey, oh man, I'm gonna rack up on those prizes. And hey, Joe, look, I've got my ISO glasses. See right here, I got my ISO glasses right here to watch, and these actually are free. These were given out by the Memphis Astronomical Society, and I think they gave away about 1,000 of these. I'm also going to take my welding helmet. I've got a little welding thing you can hold up in front of you. Although in the reading they talk about welding helmets may not be exactly great to use. There is danger looking at the sun, and they recommend that you use an ISO, certified ISO lens or filter here. So anyway, we're going to go up to Gallatin, Tennessee. I think that spot is going to have a very, very long total darkness, and hopefully if the weather's good, we're going to be able to see it up there. And we're going to do that Monday. We're going to stay over in Huntsville Sunday night and drive up there Monday morning. Wish you were with us.
I do. I really do. Just wanted to be home for this since it's happening here. It's the only time there will be an eclipse like that in my lifetime, literally where I live. And so I've missed a few hamfests this year. Due to conflicts, I missed the one in Claremore, Oklahoma, which is a big one. It tracks about 1,500 in April because it was the same weekend as another one in Branson where we build kits. And then I've missed several others this year. And Huntsville is one of them, but next year we'll be back on track.
All right. Well, you know what? You can watch the show. We'll be webcasting it.
Sounds good.
All right. So, hey, watch the show. You might even win a prize. I don't know. Should I tell Hambot just to eliminate you, or I guess I'll let Hambot. I guess Hambot can pick you if you get lucky.
Well, I'll definitely be watching during the Young Ham of the Year presentation. I'll make an effort to do that.
Okay, very good. All right, well, Joe, thanks a lot for coming on tonight and sharing it with us, and we'll see you here in a few weeks.
You bet.
Okie dokie. Well, hey, that was Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB, and he's our kit guy, and Joe always has some great kits. All right, well, it's about 9:26. Boy, we're right on time. This is about the time we go to hang out every night. This is also about the time that we turn the transmitter off at WBCQ up in Monticello, Maine. So if you're listening to us on the shortwave 5130 kilohertz, join us every Tuesday at 8 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time, and you can join us also on the web at w5kub.com. And if you're out there listening on WBCQ, send us an email. Let us know where you are. Send it to tom@w5kub.com. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and bring Hangout up, and let's just see if anybody's in there. It'll take me just a second to get things working here. I've got to close a couple of programs and open a couple. Well, I don't think anybody is there. Oh, we do have somebody there. We do. Let's see, who is that? That's who is that? Doug? Who am I looking at? Let's see. Who are we looking at there? Ham crew. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. KC1HOX. I think that's Doug. Hey, Doug.
Yeah.
How you doing? How you doing here?
Glenn. Yeah.
Well, if I got that right, you're Doug, right?
Glenn, well, there's Douglas.
Oh, okay. There's Doug. Yeah, there's Doug. HOX. What's your name? I forget.
Glenn.
Oh yeah, Glenn. Okay. All right. Cool, Glenn. Got you in there. Got Douglas in there now, and if anybody wants to join us, let me paste the link in the chat room. There we go.
Oh, Glenn.
Glenn. Okay. All right, there's the link. If anybody would like to join us in Hangout, click on that link, and you'll be in there with us. You'll be on the air. You'll be on the show. We'll give it another minute or two. I see Jim joined us here. Anybody else want to join tonight? Let's see. All right, guys. Well, welcome to Hangout. Jim, I've been following some of your notes about the Parity Act. No, not the Parity Act. About the California legislation that's going on.
Yeah, it's well, we're kind of at the dead end. We're left with the Senate approval of that bill, and just wait till somebody gets a ticket, and then we get to go fight it, and hopefully we'll get somebody to fight it in court and get that whole thing started all over again.
Yeah, well, you know, things are kind of bad, I guess, in some of these states that are really trying to take over, I guess, our rights in this area. I don't remember, years ago, I don't remember these kind of problems happening. Of course, I guess back then we didn't have HOAs and didn't have a lot of different things, I mean, I guess it wasn't an issue. People didn't have cell phones and driving recklessly, and probably the cell phone is what has caused the ruckus.
5, 10.
You're not getting much of your audio, Jim. It's breaking up really bad.
I don't even know what my source is.
There you go. We're hearing you. We're hearing you.
Yeah, it's all about the money, Tom, and it's how you manipulate it to get the money.
Oh yeah.
Hey
guys, next week, cool. There's a general book. Hey, next week we're going to have a segment on Ham Radio Deluxe.
Reset. I have too much delay here.
Well, Douglas, turn off the video on the webcast. You should only be watching and listening on Hangout. If you don't, you're going to get a 30-second delay. So everybody always turn off, mute the webcast, and use only Hangout. Maybe that got to him. I don't know. Well, next week we hope to have Ham Radio Deluxe on here. We're going to talk about Ham Radio Deluxe. What was that? I'm kind of interested in using it again. I used it a while back, and I think it's got a lot of features in it. Katie can probably tell us a lot about Ham Radio Deluxe. She's very familiar with it. I think she worked with them for a while.
I've talked with Jim on Facebook about the California thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He's a commie, and it's like, no, somebody's got to stand up in front of these guys, and I can tell you, going up in front of the California Assembly and Senate is kind of like going up against Guido in Chicago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's pretty daunting.
I can imagine.
Well, the Dodge boys in Louisiana, what are you doing on my highway? This is for the high rollers. Whoops. Pretty crazy.
So
the wording of that bill was so bad, because I was following your posts on Facebook. It was so bad that it's so ambiguous. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's our next hope, is that somebody gets a ticket and it's going to be the sacrificial lamb to take it to court, and hopefully it will go through the court proceeding without charges being dropped, and we get a case precedent. But that's what everybody's, everybody in favor of that stupid thing is hoping, that it doesn't get tossed out by a judge and set a precedent. And so it's a game of chance right now. I don't think we're under any immediate threat. We've got enough smart peace officers in the world that are too busy doing other things, that we're fairly confident that the chances are probably less than 10% that somebody's going to get tagged for that. But all it takes is a couple of those 10% for us to go back into court and revisit this. And
they got the taxi companies and everybody else they've made illegal out there, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not service specific, and we made sure that our discussion of the topic was not service specific, because being in public safety and two-way radio for decades, you realize that there are other users. We don't think, a cop is going to stop a cab driver or a PG&E utility truck or anything else, but the average Joe in a Chrysler, whether he's operating a CB or a 2-meter radio, may be seen as a distraction, and that's going to be probably in the outer reaches of the more rural areas where Barney Fife has got nothing better to do than write somebody up. And in fact, that's how a lot of felons get stopped, is for broken tail lights and everything else. So why not we get the guy for yakking on a microphone and see what we can open up here? So it's
here in Connecticut we have because the league is right here. Lawmakers won't generally, we had a blanket exemption, and then the feds came in and said, well, you can't have a blanket amateur radio exemption to your distracted driving law, so they had to change it. So basically now HTs are illegal unless you're using a speaker mic or a hands-free device.
There's some rational behavior, physical, muscle memory kinds of things that go on here. And I think we recognize that, because, God forbid somebody's trying to VFO a channel into their Bofang and driving down the highway. That's got to be 10 times worse.
Hey, some of these new radios, I can't even pull over on the side of the road and program the sucker.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have chirp and a cable, there's no way any of my Bowfangs or Wouchons would be working. And if I drop them out the window, it's $15. I don't care. But.
Well, hey,
I set mine up so that the first few channels are the major repeaters in my area. I clip them to the visor in my truck, and then I use a speaker mic, and I feel I'm pretty safe that way, and from tickets and to good driving.
And there isn't a officer that doesn't know where his switches are. He's code. So do this, put the mic down. So that's something every officer pretty much understands in his daily life. It's when you're pushing the buttons and doing the VFO thing, and I don't even do that.
Well, there's really no need for that.
Yeah. Especially local chit chat. It gets a little more dicey when you're operating HF and you got a 2-nut screwdriver. Then that gets a little more involved. But.
Well, it's just I saw the figures for like 2014. There was X amount of thousands of people that died because of texting on cell phones, and we're already up to that figure already this year. So that means that behavior is almost doubled in 3 years, and that's a serious behavior problem.
Oh yeah, and there's no documented evidence that that microphone use has ever been a problem, and that's what we're going for. So none on the microphones. Yeah, which is where not limited to language that bill is a problem, and because and when you go up a couple of paragraphs and you get into the public safety professional issue, the definition of a professional and how they're recognized by served agencies is really problematic here, because the state of California, Los Angeles County, Los Angeles City, a lot of counties depend on reserve units, which are unpaid people, and which the counties consider professionals that are doing work for the taxpayers. And
Connecticut is a very rural, outside the major cities, is very rural, and almost all those towns depend on volunteer EMS and fire service. And all those people have fire radios in their cars and like that.
Well, that's how I got.
You said there's no documented case about microphones. Let me tell you, I've been a ham 54 years. And one time, this was like 30 years ago, one time I made a left turn in town, and somehow I had the microphone in my hand, and somehow when I turned that steering wheel, that microphone wrapped all the way around that steering wheel. And I saw that was a fairly significant issue for me at that time. But it only happened once in all my life,
Is that with your 49 Dodge?
No, I think it was an ADL Camino, and it was one of those real heavy Motorola microphones.
Oh, yeah.
And a 3 on the tree, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all done that and said, well, no, let me put this down before I start spinning circles. But it's been an interesting process that is, in this political climate, you really have to pay attention to the nuance, the context, what's the agenda behind wording in some of these things, and who's involved. And I can tell you, none of this makes sense. Whatever side of the aisle these people are on, they're not there to make sense and logic like us, engineering and science types.
I don't even want to get started on that. But it's like the 555 issue. Guys have been going on Facebook and they've been talking about, you're giving away power to the HOAs and this and that. And it's like, if you go and watch the dialogue in Congress, live video on C-SPAN like I did, it's quite obvious Congress wants more hams. They want more hams active in everybody's neighborhood for emergency use. On hams to have some kind of reasonable outside antenna to use. But then you get these guys with the tinfoil hats, and they post the loudest on Facebook, on QRZ, on the forums, and they're saying, "Oh, you're giving the HOAs power with this bill," and it's like, I don't see it, because there's no way a judge going back and watching C-SPAN and watching what Congress, their intent. Yeah, maybe you can wrap the wording up, but their intent was one thing, and the courts usually follow the intent of what the lawmakers were doing.
Assuming, like the hands-free law, that nuance, that analysis is going to matter to a judge. And in one of those isolated cases, your lawyer is going to have to bring intent to the table to overwhelm them. So the onus is still on the accused to bring this to light. And if the judge doesn't care what was in Congress and is looking at letter of law, then his protection, rightfully so, letter of law versus interpretation. That's how he stays in seat.
Well, that's why we have appeals courts.
Yeah. But who's got the money for that?
Eventually somebody is going to push it. It's got to go to the appeals court, and then when it does, then there's a ruling that affects law. Until you get that, I mean, that's with anything. We've seen it with. I was involved with anchoring rights in Florida for voters and stuff, and until it got pushed to a higher court level, nothing got resolved.
Right.
Because the local people were doing what they wanted, irrespective of what federal or state law said. And it eventually got to the Supreme Court and got a ruling on it. Otherwise, local people will do what they want based on the money involved. Always.
Yeah, this is where it gets expensive for somebody. And, I'm with the ARRL, and Chris Imlay is probably not the guy I want in court with me. So, we've got to figure out who's going to backstop us when we get there.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong. I'm in New Hampshire, so it's not my place to point fingers, but it doesn't seem like they're really accomplishing the mission that everybody wants them to accomplish.
Well, that's interesting. You'll observe that, and I've been reading QST since I could first, grab my dad's copy out of the mailbox when I was a little kid, and that was decades ago. And in countering what we did, pleading for them to engage on a neutral level or any level, encountered this very strange Wizard of Oz situation of not looking behind the curtain, and not until Marty Wohl, we got a few indications beforehand, but not until Marty Wohl was no longer a division director, could we fully understand that the ARRL board does not take on an issue unless it's a unanimous vote, that none of their votes are published, so you don't know which board member or division director, whichever, has voted which way. So it's very much like, it's not quite black helicopter, conspiracy theory, but there's a dark art behind the ARRL, and there are some people that want to, break that open. And until some of the board is into attrition, and we do better with selection of participants in that organization, we're kind of stuck with, I don't want to say, cigars and backroom antics, but, there's this veil of secrecy behind that curtain there that we don't understand, and we're not allowed to understand for an organization that's a public corporation that has got a membership of 700,000 people. How do you not be accountable at any representative level in such an organization?
Well, I don't know if they have a membership of 700,000, but they represent 700,000 people.
Well, they want to. Yeah, the membership is actually 160, 170,000, which is barely statistically relevant. But
there's 700,000 hams in the U.S.
Yeah.
So but they're not all ARRL.
Right.
Again, their membership is about 160,000, and it's up to the membership to decide what they want, rather than blind trust for $49 a year is call them to task. This is what we want.
Well, like I said, I haven't been around 100 years in this hobby like other people, but it seems the general but I'm pretty active in it several hours a day. So it seems to me the general consensus that I get off online and conversations I've had on 2 meters and on HF with guys on this subject, they want the ARRL to represent us on national issues,
right?
And hands-free issues like we're having in California are wrapped into that, because it was the federal grant money and everything that pushed every state to change their laws. And so that was kind of a federal issue, and they want the ARRL to represent us on those issues, and they want them to come up with a way to promote the hobby to youth. And neither one of those missions seems to be on top of their list.
Well, yeah, they are two different things, and I'm here in the Silicon Valley, and I've got grandkids who are great navigating an iPod and an iPad, but don't know which way to plug in a lamp or an iron or a mixer in the kitchen, and it's an interesting challenge to look at different levels of dependence and expectation on technology that's just there in their lives. It was there when they came out of the womb, and they don't know that you have to put 2 wires together to make something work. So there's a very strong maker initiative out here, but even those maker initiatives are grab a couple of Arduino things, plug them together, and write some Python or some elementary code to make a robot bat a hand. And that's Johnny's a great technologist. No, Johnny just figured out how to extend very primitive movement without any understanding of it. So there's a lot we need to do.
Believe it or not, I've actually met some people that didn't know that cell phones were in fact walkie-talkies, and they thought the phone signal kind of got sucked into a wall socket or something as they were walking by.
Yeah. Well,
they had no concept at all that it was a radio.
Well, one of the things that I've yet to approach, I don't know if you're familiar with CNET, as one of the higher profile tech journals for consumers, the industry. But CNET's early publisher and high level manager, Brian Cooley, recently got his ham ticket. Now, Brian's into everything from car tech to the coolest wireless phone and everything else. And he's on my repeater system, hanging out with a couple of guys, trying to figure out how UHF and which Chinese radio or Yaesu works best. And and he's got a museum that he's stashed in the back of the CNET warehouse somewhere of various radio technologies, all the way through iterations of cell phones and other things. And I've got to approach Brian and say, hey, dude, we have a story to write here about how we got from your grandfather's car radio to the cell phone, and how much the cell phone depends on these technologies. The challenge is dumbing that down for the six-figure consumer who is determined that his kid is going to go to the right college. And why does that matter? Now, I can provide the technology part and the practical education and the knowledge foundation of that, but we're totally dependent on wordsmiths and people who understand those markets of how to put those pieces together so we don't bore people with crystal radios, and give them an appreciation that this is not just some signal squirting out of the end of a garden hose. And we have that problem with Elmer's too. I have untold stories about people going, well, I put my end fed up and I squirted signal out there, and I go, oh God. Okay, now we got to talk about antenna fundamentals because people don't understand basic circuits. So we have a tremendous challenge here to build up and retain our foundation. That's the broadcast industry is suffering. The two-way radio industry is going to be suffering. When those of us with with this stuff, retire, what's going to be left of implementing these systems and fixing them? And it's a very serious issue, because you've got millions of millennials who've got these wonderful things. Where's my phone? I don't even know where my phone is. This is actually not a bad thing. This is life. This is technical life for people. And they have no idea how it works or why. And they're very, 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 very pissed off when it doesn't work. So how do you mitigate that being pissed off and go light a candle and, open up a can of beans? The gap is huge in what we're facing here. And
maybe, but I would think that the public's absolute, it's a fetish is what it is. I see people walking around the grocery store with the cell phone staring at it. It's to a fetish level.
Oh, yeah.
But you would think that the ARRL would hire somebody that could tie that to our thing to boost our membership, because the technology is the same. But
we need media. We need the media to help that, and that's a big discussion. There are several discussions that I intend to have with Mr. Cooley, because he's been a genius at bringing meaningful technology and its significance to the masses. And I wrote for CNET for about 5 years, and did just that in a very niche area. So I'm very interested to connect with Brian and see if there's another level of what he can bring to the consumer translation, and those of us quasi-engineering types can bring to the technical aspect of this, and try to bring this together. I have this fetish of my own to try to bring the technology, the technical skills, what Micro is doing for tradecraft. And that's a very, very huge, ambiguous gap to fill. Mike's doing a great job creating welders, plumbers, and Caterpillar fixers, but you're forgetting the wires that these guys are putting up, and all the traffic systems and information systems to get them to work and pay their check. And I don't expect Mike to fill that gap, but where's that gap going to get filled from in 5 or 10 years?
Hey guys, I'm gonna get out of here. It's an interesting conversation. This would make a whole show, really. And Hangout is going to stay up. You guys continue discussing it if you want to.
Well, and Tom, as far as the show, I think a follow-on or spin-off of the whole baking thing is to look at the people involved with the paper. They have yet to go back to the folks at Tech Shop, which is a subscription industrial arts class, if you will, and try and bridge some of this together. It's a big elephant. We have a huge elephant. The Caterpillar tractor diesel repairman is a little tiny segment of what from putting up verticals to getting people to understand how these things work. Yep. There's a huge gap here.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna get out of here. 73 to everybody. Y'all keep talking.
All right, Tom, you have a good night.
Hey, and people, I'll put the link in here. Maybe more people will join you. So we'll see you next week.
Cool.
Thanks a lot. All right. Thanks to everyone for watching tonight and joining us, and hope to see you again next week. Invite a visitor or two to the show next week. We'd like to see the viewership kind of go up. Next week will be next week we're going to talk about Ham Radio Deluxe. That's going to be really interesting. That's one of the topics. It's also the last show before we go to Huntsville, and we'll be going to Huntsville Hamfest. We'll be live the 19th. I think it's a Friday, or maybe the 18th is Friday. It's think Saturday and Sunday is the 19th and 20th. That's Huntsville. We'll be webcasting that. We've got a lot of prizes. Go up to the top of the page, click on prizes, click on Huntsville 2017. You can see some of the prizes that we have for you. And then from there, we're going to go up and try to catch the eclipse just north of Nashville. We'll be right on the center line of totality. We should have about, I think, 2 minutes and 38 seconds of total darkness. We'll try to capture that on the camera. 73 to everybody, and we'll see you later. Thanks.